Howdy guys and gals, welcome back to the Social Regressive. In a previous video I went out with some friends to do a hog hunt, and we were a bit unimpressed with the performance of Hornady's VTHP match bullets. Of course, they're not intended for hunting, but I was expecting that little bit of heavier weight and some tumbling through game would get the job done, and it actually did, but it was kind of a mess. We had to go track down a couple of the hogs down in the brush and get really close quarters with them in order to get those shots. So we need to fix that. I'm looking towards some new bullets now. Now we're also doing the 350 Legend testing, so don't miss out. Make sure that you hit the notification bell down below, subscribe, and watch for some of these upcoming videos because we're going to be testing 458 SOCOM, we're going to be testing 350 Legend, and then we also have these 223 tests going on right here because if I can increase the lethality of 223, I like the cartridge a lot. Of course, low recoil, very precise overall, and it's just, you know, the cartridge that everything is built for, so hey, might as well see if we can get the best out of it. And related to that, check these out. These two are some very interesting bullets. I'm going to be testing these two at the same time because in a lot of ways they're almost like the same bullet. They have a different construction, as you can see. This one is a total metal jacket, so it's like a full metal jacket, but you do get, instead of having exposed lead at the base, you kind of have this hollow, still clad cavity back there, so that is completely jacketed. And then you have this, the Speer Gold Dot. I've been able to test some of these out in 6.5 Creedmoor. They are very precise, and they should do a really good job with terminal ballistics. But I'm going to test and see how this does in a 223 setup. Now, one thing you'll notice is that these both are pretty lightweight. They're both 55 grains. I have some others that we'll be testing out as well, a 62 and a 75, but these are really special for one big reason. They both have a very similar shape, almost exactly the same. I can actually set up my press and basically run everything the same, and I can use the same amount of powder. Everything about these is identical when the flight is happening. They both have the exact same, I believe it's 0.25 ballistic coefficient, so they both fly through the air exactly the same, at the same speeds, and the difference is when they strike game, or in this case, strike ballistics gel. So we're going to see how this does today. And I'm not the kind of guy to go shooting ballistics gel at about 25 yards. We're going to back this sucker up, and we're going to see what real distances look like with these. I want to see if we can make a bigger mess than we did with those boat tail hollow point bullets, and I'm expecting good things. Now, of course, this one is probably not going to have that great a wound cavity just because of its construction. It's a full metal jacket type bullet. It'll probably just kind of spear through. It might tumble, we'll see how it goes. But the thing about this is that if you buy both of these bullets and load them both up, you can save a lot of money practicing with this one, and then you can use the big guy right here when it comes time to take game. There's about a 5-cent difference between each bullet, and that can add up over time. Just something to think about. Here's the 55 grain Gold Dot at 100 yards. It has mushroomed perfectly. And the distance that we're looking at right here for this path, this has gone in about 14.5 inches on the leading edge. That little white path that you see right there, that little white streak, comes out to be about 14.5 inches, and then it bounces back a little bit. And the leading edge of the projectile is just a bit shy of 14 inches. So you're looking at what would be considered really good close-range pistol ballistics. This is where a lot of these want to end up. And yeah, put it right in there. So if you're looking for a defensive load, these are advertised as defensive, not hunting bullets. So it looks like this might be a great choice for you. But let's take a look at the wound channel, because I think these are going to be great for hunting. So out here at 100 yards, this is the channel right here, and you can see that it opens up almost immediately. Not the explosive entry that you get with a varmint bullet, but it still does open up very quickly. And you can see that, okay, if we kind of start at about the half-inch marker, this continues. And this is kind of mixed up with another track. You can see this from another angle. You can see it's a good three-dimensional track going on here. And it just keeps on trucking and starts to settle down right about in here, somewhere in this distance. So we're looking at about, cutting off at about 10.5 inches. So we're looking at about 10 inches of pretty devastating wound channel. This is one that I think will perform very well for hogs, especially since it starts causing damage so early on. And you can see that the bullet has held together just beautifully. So this should be able to carry its energy very well without breaking up and start causing some damage right up front. The general width of this path is about 1 inch, but we do have some kind of standout areas. We have this one kind of interesting pedal that goes on off here to the side, and that one is registering about 1.5 inches, a bit over 1.5 inches, heading up toward 1 3/4. This one's a bit unique. We don't see this on the trails for the other bullets. The 55 grain TMJ takes a little while to get up and running. Where you want to start this wound channel is kind of up to you. We'll call it about 5.5 inches there is where it starts to get interesting. It flares up to kind of its maximum width at about 8 1/4 inches. And keeps on tumbling, makes another path that you can see right here at about 13 inches. And finally starts settling down just before it exits the block. This is about 15 inches right here. And then follows this little narrow track and then swoop right out of the top of the block. So yeah, this one did not dump all its energy, and it doesn't really dump its energy in a kind of a uniform manner like you get with the Gold Dots. So this does have a very devastating wound channel. This is one of the wider ones. This looks a lot like the BTHP match. Where this does get up to, it's past 1 inch right here. This is probably about 1 1/4 inches. And this one is actually looking pretty good from two different angles. It is somewhat narrow because, again, it is tumbling, not expanding. And then as it cuts this secondary channel, you can see that this one from this angle is flat and wide from here. So it cuts more like a blade, less like a bullet that you want for hunting. From a distance of 200 yards, the 55 grain TMJ performs almost exactly the same way as it did at 100 yards. In fact, if we were to lay these two wound channels on top of each other, they would look like the same thing, and they kind of mirror each other. You can see where they cross. There's the one coming in. This is the 100 yard, cutting in across here and then exiting the block out here. And then here's the 200 yard target, or the 200 yard hit. This one kind of swoops in and heads out the exact opposite direction. And the wound channel begins at about the same spot. So this one kicks off at roughly 5 inches. Down there, just a bit past 5 inches. Tumbles, creates this big kind of two-dimensional channel that you can see right here. and then creates this secondary one as it tumbles again. So this probably started going backward right here, turned around forward again, and then exited the block out at about 19 inches right here. And one thing to notice here with both the 100 yard and the 200 yard is that those bullets did not fragment. A lot of those, the 55 grain, like the M193, those are expected to tumble and then kind of go to bits. But this one holds all together and just carves a path and leaves. So again, that's kind of a negative on its terminal performance. This is probably not one that you want to use for defense. Definitely leave it to some of these that expand a bit better. But you can see that this, it can do some damage, but yeah, for the most part, this is one that you want to use for target shooting. The 55 grain Gold Dot turns in a surprise performance at 200 yards. We're looking at about 21 inches of penetration. At 100 yards, it only came in at about 14 and a half inches way back here in the first block, but this one kept on trucking, and we're going to take a look at the reason why. If you look at the bullet, you will see that it has not mushroomed quite the same way that it did last time. There's a lot more of that core left, a whole lot more of the base, and that these petals are rather thin. They've peeled off a bit, they're not quite as wide, and there's just not as much mass out front. This one has not expanded quite as much. And if you take a look at the wound channel that we have back through here, it's nice and uniform. It does start out very quickly, so we're looking at about 1 inch when it starts to open up. But overall, this is considerably thinner than we had at 100 yards. And you can see that it settles down somewhat quickly. So we've kind of settled down by about 8.5 inches right here. And let's see what the width is like on this guy. This comes nowhere near that 1 inch width. This is more like somewhere between 1/2 and 3/4 of an inch, even at its widest point. It is nice and consistent for a good long while here, but I think this is one that is just not going to be able to dump energy quite the same way as some of these others. If you want to be able to carry some energy through your target and be able to dump a little bit of a better pattern, then yeah, maybe the 62 is going to be more up your alley. I think the 55s are going to be for close range. If you're looking for a good defensive round at some of the closer distances, I think the 55 would be a good choice, especially since it is going to settle down much more quickly at those closer distances. We're looking at the 14.5 inches of penetration rather than the 20 inches that we might get out of some of the others. So you're looking at less option for collateral damage. I think that this would be a great choice for some of those close shots, but yeah, as you start to stretch out a little bit, we need to look towards some of the heavier bullets we're going to check out in the next videos. We've seen the wound paths and these seem to be performing just the way that we want them to, but let's see what kind of leftover weights that we have. So here is our 100 yard 55 grainer right here. This little cheat sheet to remind myself where these came in on the blocks. Let's see what we have left. This should be 55 grains. Yeah, 55.1. So this might be a little heavy. It might also have picked up a little bit of gel inside those petals right there. Yeah, looking inside the curled back petals, I can see the glisten of a little bit of the gel. So it did pick some up, but this looks like it has retained all of its weight. If it has shed anything from its jacket or anything, it's going to be very minimal. Yeah, this is looking picture perfect right here. Naturally, we weren't able to recover any of the 55 grain TMJs. They just cruised into the block, blew out at a crazy angle, and didn't even hit the sandbags. So we have no idea what they ended up like, but we can just assume that wherever they are, they have retained 100% of their weight. They certainly didn't dump any inside the block, but they did actually shoot extremely tightly. So this is lending itself well to the idea of having one for targets and one for, testing, and then another one for your kind of terminal performance. This turned in quite a good group, one of the best of the day. At 100 yards, we're looking at just under an inch, just about 7/8 of an inch going on right here. While I was shooting that group, I did measure its velocity, so we're looking at a mean of 2694 feet per second, 10 feet out, and a standard deviation of velocity of about 14 feet per second. So that's quite good. This is not an extreme precision rifle where we're trying to get down below 10 and all that, so 14 is actually quite excellent, and this is going to be able to get on target at a wide variety of distances, in addition because we do have that tight group size going on back there, but we're also going to be very tight on velocities, so everything should come in very neatly. The 55 grain Gold Dot opens up a good bit here. You can see that its horizontal is extremely tight, but its vertical is a little wild. This doesn't seem to correspond to the velocities that we were getting out of this. This is my chart of what I actually shot at the time. I had a chronograph running, and we actually had a standard deviation of velocity that was lower than the TMJs. We're looking at about 13 feet per second overall, and a mean of 2786. Now, one thing you'll notice is that this is almost 100 feet per second faster than the TMJ, even though they're using the same powder charge and the same powder and all the same setup. It's just going to come down to that bullet. It probably has a little bit more friction inside the barrel, so it's going to actually leave a little bit faster. That just tends to be what happens. But yeah, we're looking at some good, pretty tight velocities going on here. This should be able to make good impacts out at range. And actually in this test where we were hitting the gel at 100 to 200 yards here, you can see that I had no problem making contact. This does come out to be about 1 3/4 inches, almost exactly, just a little bit under. And remember that we're dealing with a lightweight AR-15, so that is well within specs. I might be able to tune this in just a little bit. Maybe I can go back and look at my figures and see maybe there's a different plateau that I can use, a different node that I can check out. Everything seemed to look good originally. I think I may just stick with this, even though there is some vertical stringing going on. In the end, I think I have that perfect combo that I was after. I can get out to the range and train with my rifle and get much better at it, improve my techniques, and figure out where things hit. And then when it comes time to take the real shots, either on game or in defense of my home or my homestead, then I can start to pull these out. These, I think, should be wonderful defensive bullets as they're advertised. These are going to mushroom very quickly. They're going to expand a whole bunch, and then they are going to come to rest at that, kind of optimal pistol distance of about 14.5 inches. This is going to have limited penetration, and it's going to perform very well. And when it comes time to maybe do some hunting, I think that these are going to work within those practical ranges. Some of these will be better out at the longer distances, and we're going to talk about that in the next videos. Some of these just seem to mushroom out a little bit better and maintain their speeds a little further out. But these will get the job done. And even though this didn't mushroom out gigantically, this is still going to be perfectly functional out at 200 yards. You saw the wound channels that we carved. So a coyote or even a hog, they're going to feel this quite a bit, and hopefully this will drop them in one shot. Thank you, Speer, for sending these bullets for us to try out. In the next videos, we'll be checking out the 62 grain Gold Dots and the 75 grainers, and then we'll also be comparing it against the 75 grain BTHP match from Hornady, which is kind of the surprise one of the day. These turned in performance that I was not expecting, and these are actually quite good at what they do at various distances. So yeah, you're not going to want to miss that. Make sure that you like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Especially hit that notification bell, because without that, you probably won't be alerted to new videos when they come out. YouTube's trying really hard to suppress this kind of content, and yeah, the notification bell is going to help you to actually get what you're looking for. And then also we have our Patrons of the Destructive Arts. If anybody wants to chip in $1 or $2 a month along with these guys to help to produce these videos, there are a lot of ancillary things like the ballistics gel and all kinds of, powders and primers and all that stuff that we have to buy around here to keep these videos coming. So yeah, if you want to jump in, you can do that by clicking the link around here. Thank you to Sportsman's Guide and Stan and Mary at the 338 Lapua Magnum level out on Patreon. And thank you to Joseph Davies and Peter at the 300 Win Mag level out there. You guys are making this all possible. Thanks a lot, and we will see you all in the next video. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to like, share, and most importantly, subscribe. Even if you didn't like this particular content, go ahead and subscribe. There's probably something coming that's more up your alley. Check out this playlist right here. This is going to have videos in a similar vein to what you just watched. These 2 videos we cherry-picked for you. And finally, the Social Regressive is on Patreon. So you can become a patron of the Destructive Arts and earn some goodies while helping us to provide high-quality videos just by kicking us a few bucks a month. Thanks a bunch for your patronage.